There's a specific moment every worship leader dreads. Here's the situation. You're into the song, you're carrying the room, everything seems to be flowing, and then you hit that note. The note that you know is coming, the note that has maybe embarrassed you before, and you brace for it, right? Because your voice has never made it through that section clean. I know that moment. And there were so many years where I lived in that fear. And today I'm going to tell you exactly how I got out of it and exactly why your voice is doing what it's doing in that moment. Hey, my name is Sam and I'm with Worship Mentor. And if you're new here, I've been leading worship for over 30 years. And I have spent countless time with coaching worship leaders through voice problems that many vocal coaches just aren't specifically trained to address. I mean, some do, but a lot don't, because many vocal coaches aren't working with people who lead every single Sunday. They lead every Sunday under real pressure on a schedule that doesn't move. Now, in the last few videos, we talked about breaking the beliefs that keep worship leaders stuck. Today is different. Today is about what actually happened in my own voice when I stopped treating the symptom and started fixing the actual cause. Here's what this video is about today. If your voice cracks on high notes, or if you feel a break in your chest voice and your upper range, that's not a talent problem. Good news, it's not a confidence problem. It's a very specific, very trainable gap in your vocal musculature. And once you know what's actually happening, the fix becomes very, very clear. So let me start with my own story, because I didn't figure this out from a textbook, as many people don't. I didn't figure it out any other way except the hard way over a lot of Sundays that didn't go the way I wanted to. In the beginning of my professional singing career, I struggled mightily with my high notes because, as you can probably tell, I'm a baritone. So I thought I was just dealt a bad hand. I believed that high notes were not my thing and that I would have to stay in my baritone range for the rest of my life, because I truly believe this. Keep in mind, I was uneducated and I was untrained. But because I believed this lie, I avoided high notes like the plague, because I was 100% certain that when I would go for that high note, my voice would crack, or even worse. I did this a lot. I'd push with all my might, get somewhat close to the note, and then totally blow out my voice. So for the rest of the song, for the rest of the set, for the rest of the service or that concert or whatever, my voice would be exhausted. And then even notes I could usually hit were completely out of range because I gave all that I could give to get that feared note. And this setback, it followed me on stage on Sundays, and most certainly it followed me into studio sessions where my brother and I were recording our second album. And I don't know if you've ever cracked on stage before in front of a congregation, but if you haven't, you need to thank the good Lord. If you have, you know exactly the embarrassment that I felt. That feeling makes you not ever want to set foot on stage again. Not only is this embarrassing, but it really doesn't feel good. Like physically, it creates all kinds of serious tension and discomfort. And in really bad cases, it can cause pain. And this would happen every time I'd attempt a high note. It was such a discouraging season of my life. In fact, I remember one time going for a high note on stage, and I sang the biggest crack all into the microphone with all the confidence I had. It was so bad. And I remember in that moment telling myself, never again. I didn't even stay to talk to people after the service because I just couldn't take the embarrassment of seeing these faces. Some were friends, others were peers, and others were complete strangers. But I remember getting in my car, I drove home super discouraged and completely deflated. And from then on, I got really good at altering melodies to accommodate my problem. Now, I will say that because I took this road, I learned to get very creative, very good at creating alternative ad libs and riffs and phrasings that suited me. And this creativity allowed me to approach songs very differently. And that helps, especially when some days you just don't have it, right? And you need to find a different way to, as they say, land the plane. But deep down, I knew I needed to fix this. If there was a way to increase my range, I just knew I had to try and figure this thing out. Plus, y'all, all of my favorite singers were first tenors. Like my brother's a first tenor. And all of my favorite songs, there were these high notes, and I wanted to sing those notes. I wanted to conquer this obstacle. I just didn't know how. But thank God, everything changed when my vocal coach gave me some exercises that helped me get over the hump. I learned 2 specific techniques and exercises in particular that changed everything. I learned about not forcing, about not pushing, about not straining, and instead learning to relax my voice doing these exercises. Most importantly, I learned that I wasn't training my voice properly because I usually would practice and train when I wasn't alone. Y'all, this is a big one here. This is a big deal. This single-handedly had probably the most impact on my vocal improvement. So we're going to take a little tangent here. When you practice in a space that you don't feel 100% comfortable, to make mistakes, to sound bad, and I mean really bad, you won't do the necessary things to develop proper technique, because instead you choose to sound good. But all this does is put off the hard, very humbling work of accepting the fact that in this moment, this is the worst you're going to sound. And that's good news. If you stick with it, you will get better. And I didn't realize I was delaying my own transformation due to what I thought others would think about me when they heard me mess up and sound terrible. Once I found my safe place and started to really put in the work of developing my passaggio, everything changed. And I remember going maybe like 5 weeks doing these exercises, literally no change. And then as if overnight, I began to feel a change in my voice box, and these notes began to pour out. And these were notes that I had never sang before, notes that were way higher than I'd ever sang in my entire life up to that point. I cannot tell you the joy and sense of accomplishment I felt when I hit my first E flat 5, right? Above middle C, full voice, mixed voice, of course, but I literally had my eyes fill up with tears because I couldn't believe it. In fact, I remember singing this one particular part of this song over and over and over again because I thought I might never be able to hit this note again. I had to see for sure that if I just got lucky or if I truly unlocked the secret to these high notes. I did. And I felt like, y'all, no joke, I felt like I could conquer the world. And I want that for you. Now I want to stop right there and explain what was actually happening in my voice during all those years. Because once I understood the mechanics, everything I was trying to do, it suddenly made sense. And the exercises that fixed it, y'all, they weren't complicated. They were just targeted at exactly the right problem. And this is what it's all about. So let me kind of break this down. Let me show you what I'm talking about. The passaggio, you heard me say that word. What the passaggio is and why cracking happens. Every voice has what's called a passaggio. It's an Italian word, and it literally means passage or bridge. And it refers to the transitional zone in your range where your voice naturally wants to shift from one register to another. Now, most people know this as, they call it the break, and that's kind of the non-official term. The spot in your range where your voice either cracks or it flips into a thin falsetto or just stops cooperating entirely. Here's what's physically happening in that moment. Your voice has two primary registers. Some people say three, but let's just go with it. Your two registers, your chest voice and your head voice. Your chest voice is the full resonant sound that most of us use when we speak, like I'm speaking to you now, and when we sing lower notes. Your head voice is the lighter register that carries your higher range. Now, both are real and both are very useful. They're useful, but they require different muscular configurations to produce sound. So as you ascend in your pitch, your vocal folds, the two small muscles inside your larynx that produce sound, they have to change how they're operating. So they get thinner and longer to produce higher pitches. And at a certain point in your range, there's a gear shift required. That gear shift is your passaggio. The cracking and the breaking happen because the vocal folds, they aren't maintaining what's called chord closure through that gear shift, right? They're not staying in full contact with each other as the register changes. And so the air pushes through before the folds are ready for it. And the result is that flip, that crack, that sudden thin sound that feels completely out of your control. And the reason it happens consistently at the same notes is because it's a training issue, not a random one. Your muscles, they don't know yet how to stay coordinated through that transition. So every time you approach those notes, the same thing happens like clockwork. But there's good news. The good news is it's a muscular problem, and muscles can be trained. Okay, so let's talk about mixed voice, chord closure, and exercises that can build the bridge. So this is where mixed voice comes in. Mixed voice isn't a trick. It's not even really a hack. It's literally what it says in the name. It's a blend of both your registers where you're drawing from your strength of your chest voice and you're pulling out the range of your head voice at the same time rather than flipping from one to the other. So when mixed voice is developed, the passaggio stops being a wall that you crash into and becomes a zone that you move through. So the gear shift still happens. It has to physiologically do that. But it happens smoothly because the musculature on both sides of that transition is strong enough and coordinated enough to stay connected through it. Now, the specific piece that makes mixed voice possible is chord closure, keeping those vocal folds in constant contact with each other as you move through that transition zone. So without chord closure, you get the flip, you get the crack, and with it, you get connected, powerful sound across your full range. So the question is, how do you actually build this? So there are two exercises that are specifically designed to develop both the musculature and the coordination required. Now, the first is called a vocal fry, and you probably have done this when you were a little kid, going that low, creaky, crackly sound at the very bottom of your range. You do that. You did that as a kid, and you probably do that sometimes when you wake up early in the morning. That vocal fry is the lowest, most relaxed sound your voice can produce. It's that creaky, crackling sound like a door that needs oil. And most people think of it as a bad habit or something to avoid. It's actually one of the most targeted exercises for developing chord closure, because in vocal fry, your vocal folds are coming together completely at very low pressure. So you're training the folds to close without any of the tension or force that usually gets in the way. So over time, consistent work with a vocal fry trains the muscle memory of chord closure. So when you move into higher registers, the folds have now learned to stay in contact instead of breaking apart. Now, the second exercise is narrow vowel work. And this is exactly what it sounds like, taking vowel sounds and narrowing them slightly as you ascend in pitch, something like an yee or a instead of an open ah. That's where you get that crack. As you climb through the passaggio, that's how you can use these narrow vowels. They reduce the amount of air pressure that's hitting the folds, which gives you and your muscles time to coordinate the register shift without getting blown apart by the force of the breath. These two exercises done consistently are what build the bridge through your passaggio. Now, this doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen faster than you might expect because they're targeting exactly the right problem instead of just hoping that more singing is going to fix it. And I'm here to tell you that that just won't happen. Actually, I want to tell you about a student I was working with. Her name is Ashley, because her situation is one I see regularly, and it's a version of the same root problem showing up differently. When Ashley came to me, she was defaulting, especially on the high notes. She was defaulting to falsetto every time she needed to reach these upper notes. And here's the thing. Her falsetto was fine, but I knew she could hit the notes. But when she would go there, it was thin, it had no power behind it, and she knew it wasn't carrying the room the way she needed it to. And what I heard immediately was that she had the range. The notes were there. She just didn't have the mix developed enough to hit them with any real strength. So her voice was taking the path of least resistance and flipping into falsetto to survive the phrase. We built back her mix. Same work, chord closure, vocal fry, narrow vowels, consistent application over time. And what happened on the other side of that work wasn't just that she stopped defaulting to her falsetto. Her usable range grew by almost an octave and a half. An octave and a half with power, with endurance, not just the ability to hit a note once in a lesson, but to carry it through a song on a Sunday in front of people. Life-changing stuff. And that's what mixed voice development actually does. It doesn't just patch the crack. It opens up the full instrument in a way that truly nothing else can. Now, I do want to address something that I hear fairly often. I talk about this and I hear, Sam, I've tried exercises before and nothing's changed. I believe you. And I want to tell you why that's probably true and why it's not necessarily a sign that your voice can't be trained. Well, first off, of course your voice can be trained, but most vocal exercises are taught in isolation without the context of why they're being assigned or what specific problem they're targeting. So if you've been doing exercises without understanding what they're building, then you're working without a target. And work without a target can feel like progress until you actually get on stage on Sunday and realize that the same problem is still there. Vocal fry, narrow vowel work, this stuff isn't magic. These exercises work because they're specifically targeting chord closure and register coordination, the exact mechanism behind the crack. And so if you've done exercises that weren't aimed at that specific thing, of course nothing's changed. You were solving a different problem. And some of you might be thinking, Sam, I've been singing for years. Shouldn't this have developed on its own? Well, not necessarily. because chord closure through the passaggio is a specific muscular skill. Most people develop strong chest voice naturally through use. Mixed voice almost always requires intentional, targeted training because nothing in normal singing forces you to develop it. You just keep defaulting around it. You'll default to more chest, or you'll just default to your falsetto. So let's bring this back together. The crack and the break in your voice, it isn't random. And it's not a sign that your voice isn't built for this. It's a very specific thing. Your vocal folds are losing chord closure as you move through your passaggio. The fix is your mixed voice, developing that, building the muscular coordination to carry both registers through that transition zone. The two tools that develop it most directly, vocal fry for chord closure, and then narrow vowel exercises to reduce pressure through the shifts. And of course, there's other exercises that help with this, but this is trainable, y'all. I know this because I've trained it. I trained it for myself. I trained it for Ashley. I've trained it for several worship leaders that I work with consistently. And this isn't like months and months and months of grinding, but really it's about focused, structured work that's aimed exactly at the right problem. So listen, if you have been dealing with cracking or breaking in your voice, I want you to do something. I want you to comment down below, and I want you to tell me where it's happening, maybe which notes or which songs. What's the situation that you're finding yourself in? I'll get in the comments. I'll help you out as much as I can, but I really want to help you personally. And so I'll respond if you write in there what's going on. And in the meantime, you can grab my free guide on why your voice fails on Sunday. It's linked in the description below. And it walks through exactly why this happens and gives you a clear starting point, whether you've been dealing with this for 6 months or you've been dealing with it for 6 years. I'd bet you have no idea just how amazing your voice can truly sound. Trust me, there's magic in that voice box. You just need to learn how to release it.